Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell, and author of my new book, Brand Bewitchery: How to Wield the Story Cycle System to Craft Spellbinding Stories for Your Brand. Grab your print or Kindle copy now on Amazon, and please do the most important thing you possibly can for a new author: rate and review it. On today's show, we explore how to overcome your quitter story. It's not just you. We all wrestle with the stories we tell ourselves about being frustrated, about doubt, the I can't possibly stories, or I'm just too tired, too much on my plate fictions, especially in these chaotic times. Well, with us is the No BS business coach and author of the New York Times bestseller, The Way You Do Anything is the Way You Do Everything, Suzanne Evans. And she is a fireball. And as you're going to hear, I inadvertently step in it during our conversation, meaning I provided all of our listeners, including you, with an excuse to buy into your quitter story. Didn't mean to do it. Suzanne called me out, but then she provided some actionable ways to bust the quitting cycle by how you practice, of all things, winning. Practicing winning. I love that. One of my favorite tips she gave me is writing a loser list, asking yourself, who loses if you quit? I'd never thought about the impact of quitting this way, and it really changed my whole dynamic in thinking around my own quitting stories. Her firm, Suzanne Evans Coaching, is a member of the Inc. 5000 Hall of Fame. Her work blends business strategy, lifestyle, and storytelling to position people and their businesses for powerful growth. Suzanne has provided support for over 3,000 business owners and is the founder of The Give Movement Journey, a nonprofit serving women worldwide in education, entrepreneurship, and equality. And when COVID reared its hideous head, providing us all the excuse to quit, she launched the More Than Okay Club, helping business owners navigate the madness of the pandemic and now the pandemonium of political and societal unrest. Oh, and one more thing. You're going to want to stick around for the end of the show when Suzanne has a special bonus for you to participate in her acclaimed online event called Driven the Event. It's packed with life-changing strategies that drive traffic, leads, sales, and profits. But it all starts by overcoming your quitting story. Let's hear how now with Suzanne Evans on the Business of Story. Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
And you are coming to us from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, I understand?
That is correct.
How are things in Chapel Hill?
They're overcast, and that might be a metaphor, things are well. We are an interesting little place here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's one of the kind of education capitals of the world. We have almost 40 universities in a 30-mile range. We're one of the medical capitals of the world with Duke University Medical Center and UNC Chapel Hill. So our state is playing this very conservative right now. So we are still not in full lockdown, but semi-lockdown. Feel very blessed to be in such a great area and you just go around here and everybody's singing from the same songbook. They really are. They are all in this together and working to get through this, whether it's from the business side or the medical side or the education side. So while this is a tough time for everywhere, this is a very good place to be during tough times.
Well, you are in the coaching business, the mindset business, and helping people overcome themselves so that they can grow their businesses. What has surprised you the most about COVID, the coronavirus, and its impact on the psyche of your friends, family, or your clients?
I'm not sure if this is a surprise or a validation, but people will find any excuse to stop. And we live I come from the business space. So there's always a challenge, right? The cat is sick, the kid has a school issue, somebody's spouse leaves, and something is always in life affecting your business. But I think what's been so interesting, and I will use the words of the great Ben Zander, who wrote The Art of Possibility. What has been so fascinating to me about this is that we're all in a similar boat right now, having a challenge, an obstacle, a crisis, if you will, and how so many people have used this as an opportunity to slow down, to stop, and to back up. And that always fascinates me because it is a part of what I call the cycle of quitting.
Can you take us through the cycle of quitting?
Yeah, years ago, I was running a little group coaching program, and I had, my business was probably maybe a little under $1 million at the time, so much, much smaller than the business I have now. And I had about 12, 15 people in a little group program. And out of that 12 or 15 people, I got to the last 3 calls in the program. I think it was 4 or 6 month program. And there were only about 4 people showing up. And a couple of people were just not able to be there. But about 5 to 7 of them had literally quit. And it pissed me off so badly. And it annoyed me so much that I said, I'm going to track quitting. And so for the next 6 months, I tracked my own quitting, but I also tracked every single client I had and when they would quit and what quitting looked like if they quit paying me, if they quit showing up, if they quit a project that we had worked on, if they quit an idea we had come up with. And I really started to analyze quitting and why people quit and when they quit and what it looked like. And it truly is a cycle, and it comes from wanting to feel better, because when you're in the hard stuff, my wife said something to my 3.5-year-old son 2 days ago, and it blew my mind. He always comes in first thing in the morning, and the first thing he does is he strips off his pants and his shirt and says, "Good morning." And we always said, "Go put your dirty clothes in the dirty clothes hamper." And he said, I don't want to. And he said, "I don't want to do it. It's so hard." And my wife looked at him and said, "Life is a series of hard things that we don't want to do, and you have fun in between." And it kind of blew my mind. And I said, I don't know that he got that, Melanie, but that was pretty brilliant. And that's what business is. It's what life is. And I watch so many people get into this cycle of they would rather feel better than be successful. They would rather be comfortable than they would to have the rewards that they want to have. They would rather protect themselves than win. Thus is the cycle of quitting. And so I am witnessing a lot of courage right now. And I'm witnessing a lot of drive and hunger and determination. And I'm witnessing a lot of quitting right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's pretty understandable. This is the mother of all quitting opportunities, isn't it, to knock you down? And yet, on the other side of that coin is the energy and the power of saying, I'm going to get through this. And in fact, it's igniting me to work even harder. What I've seen in our world, in our business, those first 3 weeks, it was like we'd been sucker punched. And people didn't really know what to deal with it. But what has surprised me is how quickly and how resiliently people have come back, and how they're like, you know what? Okay, it is what it is. We are moving forward. And I've been really impressed where I think I've seen more quitting when business was good and you just didn't have to put in that much effort to do it and you're kind of going along with it. The quitting doesn't have as big of an impact on you maybe because you're just kind of coasting. That people seem like they are ignited now. They're like, that good old American experience of that American spirit of let's get after this thing.
A lot of people are, but there's also a lot of permission right now, right? You even said it. I listened to you give permission in that moment. You said, "Isn't this the mother of all?"
Oh, I sure did. It is. Yeah.
No, this probably will not be the worst thing that ever happens in my life. Knock on wood, I hope it's not. I'm going to lose somebody. I'm going to have some type of tragedy in my life. I mean, no one gets through this unscathed, right? And so I think we have to be really careful that we don't treat what we're experiencing right now as the mother of all, right? Um, but we look at it as another challenge, another mountain to move, another opportunity, which you were talking about how so many people are using this as a really driving force, right? So it can be an opportunity. And of course, it becomes whatever you make it. It's an opportunity or an obstacle. That doesn't take away the very tactical, tangible side of this that is hard stuff is going on, and we're all having to adapt our lives and change how we do business and change how we do school and all of that. But I really have always I created something as soon as this happened called the More Than Okay Club. And it was a free service that's kind of winding down now, but it was a free program for people to jump into and get marketing ideas and business ideas and support. And the reason I created it was I said, let's stop treating this like an amputation, right? This is a wound. It's not an amputation. We're not cutting anything off. We're not ending anything. Business isn't over. It is simply something that we need to figure out what it needs to heal. And I've really been trying to take everybody down the path of thinking about this, right? This is not permanent. It will make a lot of things different for the future, but it is in that permanence that we get so set in our ways. And even if we are driving and hungry, a lot of times we pivot. You've been hearing the word pivot a lot. Well, if you pivot 2 times 180 degrees, you've gone in a circle. So I really find this to be a time to plant yourself instead of pivot. So it's interesting, right? It's all fascinating.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And when I say it's the mother of all excuses is because collectively this generation has not seen anything quite like this. You know, a lot of us went through the global recession, but we've not seen something that impacts health and our careers, you know, collide all at the same time. But let's talk a little bit about the stories we tell ourselves. And in your experience with the people you've worked with, are the quitting stories generally stronger in our mind than the perseverance stories, that we tend to yield to the stories we tell ourselves and the excuses that we make about quitting when things get hard?
Well, I'm the daughter of a 7th generation farmer and a teacher and basketball coach. And the number one thing I learned from my parents was winning. My parents taught winning like other people taught manners.
What did they do? Give us an example of some of the things that they told you that instilled winning in you.
Oh, sure. They would tell you that second place is as good as last. And that don't sign up for anything that you're not willing to try to excel at or be the best at or go to number one towards. That doesn't mean that these were people who were, didn't accept losing or were poor sports. They also taught you that you can't win everything, but you can try to win everything. And so they taught a lot about that. You know, my mom, I would not suggest this to anyone, but my mother coached me as a basketball coach when I was in junior high. And we were in a championship game, and it was like a 2-point game, and I rolled my ankle, and I came over to the sidelines with a couple of minutes left on the clock, and I said, "Mom, I can't even walk. You're going to have to take me out of the game." And she said, "What's the rules in JV basketball of when you have to come out of a game?" I said, "When there is blood present." She said, "Is there blood present?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Win the game." And we did. It was one of the greatest lessons of my life, is that you can play hurt. You can win hurt. And most people aren't willing to play hurt, and they certainly don't understand how to win hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're in right now. The exact situation we're in right now is, are you an amateur or are you a pro? Because pros will play through this difficult time that we're in. Pros will play hurt. Pros will win hurt. And what I was saying in the beginning was, I was just going to mention that coming from that mentality of a farmer's daughter and my mom being a coach, you know, we were really clear about the fact that that you have to show up with a certain level of understanding that this isn't going to be easy. You know, so many people pray to move mountains. God, if you'll just move these mountains, I will, you know, do good in the world and I will be good in the world and all that. And then they wake up with a shovel in the bed and they're confused, right? Mountains get moved when you dig and when you do the work. So I think life is a gymnasium, and it's all hard work and it's all a challenge. And however much you're willing to put in is exactly what you get out.
So it's this idea of effort versus outcome. It's the effort that counts, but don't necessarily count on the outcome. But you put in the effort, you have a much better chance that you're going to have more positive outcomes. When you were telling your story, I was thinking about when I was a kid. I don't know, I was 10 or 11, maybe 12, and I really got into playing tennis. My neighbor up the hill, John Hanley, and he and I would go up to Kamayakan Junior High School, and we would hit that tennis ball over, and he was very good, and he taught me how to play, and I really loved it, just loved it. And to the point of I said, hey, Mom, I want to go to the Parks and Rec tournament. And she looked at me like, okay. My mom was quite a good athlete. She was a golfer until she was 84 years old. She just loves sports. My dad could care less. My mom will watch anything and everything on TV. She's 95. She's doing wonderfully because she was always been very active. Well, we go out to the Parks and Rec tennis tournament, and I'm, taking on the fellow 11 or 12-year-old across from me. My mom is the only one watching this. She has her folding chair there. It is a hot July afternoon up in Seattle. And I start playing, and I'm really into it. And Suzanne, I'm just like, I got this thing. I'm feeling really great. But then the guy starts coming back. And for the first time in my life, I felt myself folding. And I'm like, oh, I got to be careful. I got to make sure I get this over. And I stopped playing, and I started thinking about everything and got like way too careful. And I just folded. I just completely choked, and the guy beat me, and I come off the court, and I was the better player, but I totally choked. And my mom looked at me as she's folding up her chair, and I remember her just kind of shaking her head, and she kind of looked at me like, why did you stop playing? and it was just something I had never experienced, competitively like that before. But it also taught me that when I feel like, oh my God, things aren't going my way, or I got to get safe, or I got to really mind my P's and Q's, is the exact wrong thing that I should do. I should continue to be bold and keep moving forward. And that little tennis lesson has played with me throughout my life. It brings me back to that question. Are the quitting stories stronger inherently, innately in human beings than perseverance stories?
This is exactly what I was going to come back to. So one of the things that I really learned from my parents and have kind of really been able to experience as an adult is, yes, the quitting stories are typically stronger because when I said my parents taught me to win, they helped me rehearse winning. Most people only rehearse quitting. Think about it. You never we always think about, okay, what will I say to them when I say I'm not going to do this and I don't want to do it, or I'm going to give them a no. And I have to say, especially women, right? A lot of guilt and shame and pressure of saying no, or, or holding our boundaries. So we will spend tons of time rehearsing the mess up, replaying the mess up. So in all of that rehearsing and replaying, it becomes a stronger story. If we spend exactly that much time rehearsing the win. Jimmy Valvano is one of the greatest basketball coaches to ever live. And for the many, many years that he coached basketball, when his players came into the gymnasium the first day of practice of every single season, he drug out a ladder, he put it under the basketball net, and he had them practice cutting down the nets. He said, most of my players come from places where they didn't see their parents win. They didn't see family members win. They've never practiced winning. They've practiced failing, but it's time to start practice winning. So yeah, it does become stronger because we rehearse it more.
How do you practice winning?
Yeah, I mean, the Jimmy V story is a great example. When I'm working with my clients, some of them, will be trying to hit $1 million in their business, and the most they've ever made is maybe, $150,000, $200,000 in their life. And so we practice spending money I'm serious. We practice, like, what will the business look like? What will the team look like? Let's build it out for that. We practice everything from the conversations to the talks to the tonality to the copy that we write. As it is, we've heard fake it till we make it. I've always kind of hated that, but there is this act as if, right? Act as if, behave as if. I remember when I was first getting started and I didn't have two nickels to rub together, and I was starting a coaching business, and I walked into these rooms, and what I looked at was I would notice the people who immediately had a feeling and a look of certainty. And those were the people that were successful, and they were getting clients, they were getting money. And I thought, I don't even have money to buy an appropriate handbag and shoes that would make me seem successful. And so for a year, all I wore was black. I'd find cheap black tops from Walmart, from Kmart, wherever, and pants that you couldn't even tell what it was. They were just cheap. But I went out and bought myself one pair of really expensive shoes and a great handbag. And I walked into every room, and it was always all black. But I was acting as if. I wasn't faking anything. I had the money. I spent the money. It was my money. But there's something about practicing who you want to be and practicing how you want to be. The way you do everything is the way you do anything, right? The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So you can practice this with your children. You can practice it with your spouse. You can practice it with the clients you have now. But if you're not practicing winning, you're rehearsing failing.
It's an interesting concept because what makes us uniquely Homo sapiens is our ability to think in story. And so much of those stories are fiction. What is tomorrow looking like? And what does next week look like? You think about the dollar bill. That's total fiction because it's not really worth anything. It's not worth the paper it's printed on, but we tell our stories and we all agree, yep, that story says that $10 is worth X amount of money. So what you're talking about is living and creating and living into fictional accounts of winning so that you can experience that and hopefully program your brain to then actually achieve it.
And of course, also watching winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really spending your time going, what does winning look like for someone like me? Right. So finding a model, finding an example. I'm a huge, and I'm sure with your specificity and story, you are too. I'm a huge documentary fan, right? So I love to find documentaries where I can really get into, get under the microscope to examine someone's winning. I don't know why I have so many basketball examples. Maybe mom is on my mind today, but John Wooden, the very famous basketball coach, wrote the book on leadership, wrote several books on leadership. And I love his success pyramid. And that was from 35 years of studying success. So I go to that John Wooden success pyramid and look at what it takes to be a winner. And I look at that probably once a week to remind myself, am I practicing this? Am I implementing this? Am I behaving this way? Am I doing this? So we learn winning from studying winning as well as acting as if.
So I've got to ask, as you have this winning mindset, can you take us to a moment where that quitting story overtook you and what happened in that and what you learned from it?
I have a lot of failure stories, but I don't have many quitting stories. And that's because, again, if I go back to Sue and Johnny Evans, my parents, I never missed a day of school, kindergarten through 12th grade. Because they said, this is your one job, and you go if you're sick, you go if you're tired, you go if you're late, you go if you don't want to go, you go. And so I have failed so much in my life. I have a $6 million business, and it only runs off of 20% of success because 80% of everything I do fails. It's the great story from the chief marketing officer of Coca-Cola when he went into the board and he said, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is everybody knows we spent about $500 million on marketing last year. The good news is 50% of it worked. And the board goes, oh my gosh, that's wonderful. How do we repeat that next year? He said, the bad news is we don't know which 50%. Right? And so the deal is that you have to do everything and most of it will fail to get to success. So I have thought about quitting. I certainly would be, not a human if I hadn't. But I've just got this voice inside of me that goes, this is ugly, this is messy, this is crazy, this is hard, and you got to finish it. And you won't know what you got out of it unless you do finish it. So I can give you a million failure stories. Quitting stories are harder for me to find.
Well, let me ask you then, let's start, instead of a quitting story, how about a starting story? How did you find yourself to become a coach and build the business, the very successful business you have? What were you doing before that, and what triggered you to take some big risks?
Well, I was working in the Broadway theater industry. It's probably, we don't have time for me to get to how I got there, but I was working in the Broadway theater industry for 10 years as an assistant producer in Broadway theater. And it was a very interesting job. I was putting Reba McEntire into Annie Get Your Gun and Usher into Chicago, and I opened 5 Broadway shows. So it was fun, but it was not very lucrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I also couldn't really see a very specific future there. And I got what I think a lot of people get, which is the itch. Like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? Is this all there is? Can I have more freedom? Can I have more choices? And so I spent probably a 3 or 6 month journey on trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And there were a lot of different happenstances. I ended up in coaching and landed on coaching. And I actually stayed in that 60-hour weekday job while I built the side hustle of coaching. And it was a dress rehearsal night where we were putting Christina Applegate into Sweet Charity. She had broken her ankle actually in Minneapolis. She had broken her attitude in Detroit. And we were trying to get this show up and not lose our asses and get it to Broadway. And during a dress rehearsal night, there's a number in Sweet Charity where all of the women come to the front of the stage and they sing, there's got to be something better than this. There's got to be something bigger to do. And when I find that something better to do, I'm going to get up, get out, and go live it. And I went, oh, shit. They're singing to me. And it is in that moment, that very moment, that I actually started my business, because I thought, this is the whisper that everybody talks about, except that mine came in the form of a song. And I knew God had a sense of humor, because we ran that particular number 27 times that night because it had a lighting issue. So that is how I started a coaching business.
So he was hitting you over the head. You've got to do this. And how old were you roughly at that time?
I was 32 years old.
32. So you had spent, what, 10 years, did you say, in Broadway?
Yeah, I graduated from undergrad. I went to NYU for my master's in educational theater. And as soon as I graduated that 2-year program, actually, I had been in the Broadway theater industry for about 7 years at that time, because I stayed in my job for 2 years while I actually launched the business. So I started when I was 20. I just turned 25.
And why did you want to go into coaching?
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to give back. I ran the gamut of everything from a hospice nurse to, which would have been a terrible decision. Those people are angels on earth. And I actually ended up kind of in therapy and positive psychology, which led me to coaching. But another story of that is when I finally found coaching and I was like, what is this? And this is so interesting. I went home one night and I told Melanie, and she said, it's so funny. I've been DVRing a show called Starting Over. And this was a show with a Jan Van Zant, Rhonda Britton, and a male therapist. I can't remember his name. And women were lived together for 30 days and started their life over. And it was really a life coaching show. And I watched a couple of episodes and I went to Melanie and I said, this is my calling. And she said, oh my God, I'm so excited, you're inspired. Why is it your calling? I said, to trap women in a house for 30 days and boss them around. I was meant to do that. All joking aside, it was a lot of little things like that I just kept learning about coaching. And then of course I hired my own coach, because I said, if I'm interested in this, clearly I'm lost and confused, I could use some help. So over about a 3 to 6 month time frame, just a lot of different things came into play and coaching came to the forefront. And I really saw it as my destination.
All right. So I've got a question for you, but I want you to answer it after we come back from our break with our good friends at Sendable. And that question is, What do you do when you feel like you're ready to quit? Because even though you've got this great, mentality and you were brought up around this, I've got to believe you still have it and your secrets to overcoming that quitter story. But let's cover that right after this. Do you struggle pulling good content from your clients for your online storytelling? Do you wrestle with getting it scheduled for publishing and having to constantly reformat it for all your different channels, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and others? Do you get lost in the metrics and finding easy ways to demonstrate your online storytelling success to your clients? Well, you're in luck because Sendable can rid you of all of that. They will help you simplify your content marketing and provide you with all of the tools you need for powerful social media storytelling. And this is storytelling that converts customers, ignites smiles on the faces of your clients, and demonstrates your true worth to the growth of their brand. In fact, it's so powerful, Sendable will make you look like the hero in this whole thing, even as you place your clients and their customers at the center of the stories you tell. We here at the Business of Story are among more than 3,000 digital agencies around the world who rely on Sendable for all of our digital storytelling. And you can too with our special Business of Story offer. You can now get 30% off the Sendable Traction Plan. Just go to sendable.com/park30 and start freeing yourself from cumbersome content marketing with simple online storytelling that sells. All you got to do is visit sendable.com/park30 and start your traction plan today. Welcome back to the show. Park Howell here with Suzanne Evans. And Suzanne, I got to tell you, I went through the quitting thing a ton of times when I was writing my book. I just literally had the second box fulls of books showing up by the UPS guy today before I came in here to this podcast. I started writing it 6 years ago. When I was done with that first round of the publication, I thought I'm not ready to publish it because I felt like it was maybe naive in some areas, or I wanted to proof it out more around the world as I was coaching and teaching on the story cycle system. And it has been weighing in the back of my mind. And I would ask myself, am I just procrastinating? Am I quitting on this project? Or am I really doing something? So I was glad I did, actually, because I spent 5 years proofing it out. And then a year and a half ago, I started writing it again. It's called Brand Bewitchery. And it's everything that I know about brand storytelling using my story cycle system. And what helped me overcome that urge to procrastinate, which I guess is a modicum of quitting, you're just not getting to it, is I heard Jerry Seinfeld say that he pulls a calendar out and every day he says, I'm going to write jokes for an hour or two or whatever. He's got his set schedule and he puts a big red X on that calendar every time he does it. So when he misses a day, as we all do, whether we're called away for something else or we're procrastinating, of course, you don't get the red X. So I did that. I went down to Office Max. I bought one of those big plastic calendars, and it was one that went from July of 2018 through all of 2019, and I was now in about October. So I thought, all right, my goal is I have to have this thing done and published or this before this plastic calendar runs out. And I sat there and I just started doing X after X after X. I would get tired, I would procrastinate, I would miss a few days of writing. But I can tell you, I completely rewrote that book. It's all of 288 pages now, so it's quite a tome on brand storytelling. But it was that singular act with that red Sharpie on that plastic calendar and me Xing it every single day. I got at least 1 hour of writing in the morning. That kept me going and that had that UPS guy delivering that book to me today. Do you have similar? So I guess coming back to you, that really helped me overcome a quitting story or at least a procrastination story that I know I was playing on myself. When that hits you, what do you do?
Well, ironically, if I'm going to quit anything, it's writing.
It's writing.
Yes, yes. I don't love to write. I have a New York Times bestseller, and
And
right.
congratulations on that. That's no easy task right there.
Well, that was easier than writing it. So I always tell people, I go, you can be a New York Times bestseller and you could hate writing, and once I get into it, I enjoy it. But it's funny that you use that as an example, because if I've ever almost quit things, it's definitely been writing. But I will tell you, I did have a serious conversation with myself about keeping going when I was writing that book. I've written a few books, but that's the one that was my biggie and got the most attention. And I had procrastinated it and procrastinated it. And I'd come up with a million different ways to do it right and do it wrong. And I finally had carved out some time to go check into a hotel to finish it. And on the way to the hotel, I was like, oh, I'm not feeling great. Oh, this is weird. And I go and I grab some dinner. No kidding. By midnight that night, I had the worst case of bronchitis. And so I sat in a hotel room bed for 2 nights and just coughed my lungs up and didn't write a word. And then I told myself again, like, you got to do this. You're about to, publishers waiting for deadline. Long story short, when I am wanting to quit, I do what I did then, and I always do it. I write a loser list, and it's called a loser list. And what I basically do is I write down all the people who lose when I quit or when I stop.
Oh, so it's not about you, it's about the people you impact.
Yeah, it's about, for me, it was like someone had paid me in advance, right? So they lose money. It was about, I had pre-sold something like 3,000 books at that time. And so I basically stole money from people, right? I mean, when you really start to write down like who loses when I stop. I also was aware of the fact that my family lost because my mom had been telling everybody about this book I was writing. And I realized that the people who were going to get benefit, just like your book, right? The people that are going to learn from it and grow from it and their businesses are going to expand from it, they lose. And then I read that list and realize that I've made this all about me. Anytime you want to quit, it's the most selfish act you can take. And for me, that turns it around for why I'm doing it, who I'm doing it for. And if I can't get my head out of my ass for me, get it out of my ass for everybody else.
That is such a fascinating way of looking at it. I've never thought about it that way before. But when you start getting down yourself or you're feeling like, no, I'm just not going to do this, to make a list of everyone that is impacted in that process. Did you learn that somewhere? Is it just something you've experienced over life?
It's something I've experienced over life for a few times. And when I began my business, which I think growing a business is the greatest course in personal development you will ever take. And it really kind of came to the forefront. But when I was doing that study of quitting and the cycle of quitting, I asked myself what has kept me from quitting. And certainly some of the things we've talked about here tonight, it can be the education that you've had, the support that you've had, the even the beliefs and the values that you hold. But one of the things I recognized was that when I make it not about me, I don't stop, because it's not just about me and it isn't about me. And so I kind of formalized that over the years, teaching it to some students and to some clients around, create that loser list, because you've made this all about you. And when you make it all about you, you mess it all up.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You have a line on your website I pulled somewhere that I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to explore this with you because I would love to hear some of your answers to it. All of us that have tried to run businesses, have grown businesses, and maybe have sold businesses, come across this, and it's a question I don't know that we always ask ourselves, but you had said this line of copy, why your business isn't succeeding and what you can do about it. So you're already making that assumption that you might have a successful business, but it's actually not succeeding. Or maybe you're on the rocks, or maybe you're about ready to go out of business, or you're using COVID as an excuse to not make your business roll. Can you elaborate a little bit on your thinking there, and what are some of the things that people can do to get over themselves and their mindset and the stories they tell themselves to turn the corner and be successful with their business?
Well, one of my dearest friends is, I think, one of the greatest writers ever, and his name is Larry Winget. He has 6 New York Times bestsellers. And I cannot take credit for saying it in this way because he says it in this way, and I think it's pretty genius. He says, if your business sucks, you suck. If your kids suck, your parenting sucks. If your bank account sucks, you suck at making money. And so if you want to fix anything in your life, stop sucking. And that's really what that line is about, is that, what is it that you are not committed to? What is it you're not showing up to or for? What are you not consistent with? What are you not willing to do or be or invest in? What do you need to learn? Because everything is fixable. I mean, literally everything is fixable. And if everything is fixable, it's simply a matter of our decision to make sure it gets fixed. I was teaching a class yesterday and I was telling them, I said, I want you guys to write down the 15-minute rule. And the 15-minute rule is, if you're working on solving a problem for longer than 15 minutes, you're no longer solving a problem. You're just procrastinating. Because if you can't figure something out in much more than 15 minutes, it means you can't figure it out and you need to go to an expert, you need to get support, or you need somebody else to do it for you. So that's really what that line is about.
The 15-minute rule. So you're puzzling over something and you let 15 minutes go by and you think, okay, I'm just going to take a break on it and come back to it, which a lot of people do, and I do. I come back and you do find that solution sometimes just by letting it ruminate in your head. But what you're suggesting is, if you can't find it in that first 15 minutes, that you should then go and ask for help or seek help somewhere?
Or just let somebody else do it. I love the story of the 1-800-Flowers founder. He started 1-800-Flowers with his brother, and he had a day job as kind of like an executive director of a boys club. And he was making like $60,000, $70,000 a year. And 1-800-Flowers grew to be this couple of $1 million business. And finally it had a board of directors, and the board of directors called him in and they said, you got to leave your job. This is going to be a multi-million dollar, this is going to be a sellable company for hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're still going to a job at the boys club every day. They said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm not quitting my job. And they said, why? And he goes, I don't want to come in and mess this up. And the point is that so often we're doing things and solving problems that we shouldn't be solving, that we should leave to team or that we should leave to experts. I'm never going to fix my own plumbing in my house. I'm going to hire a plumber to do it so I don't flood my whole house. But we don't need to be an expert in everything. And you don't have to have the answers to everything. You just have to guide the answer.
Have you seen with COVID, what we've all been going through here, someone who has really risen to the occasion, really has stood out and has made great strides with themselves and or their business that maybe they wouldn't have made had the COVID thing not hit, but it was just that impetus, that disruption enough that like ignited something in them and they just took off?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, I have client after client after client who I went, you better bless this. I know this is a horrible thing we're all going through, and we certainly, we don't want people to suffer, whether it's health-wise or economically, or we don't want people to ever suffer, but you better bless this mess, because man, did this light a fire in you. One of the things that I preach on quite often is the fire inside of you has to be bigger than the fire around you. And man, have I seen that in just person after person. I have a client named Jean who she's done well. I mean, it's not that she was doing nothing before this, but Jean kind of did well, and she kind of sat in the doing well, if you know what I mean, right? Like, okay, I'm doing okay. And this came up, and she really felt just this burning desire to like guide people through this. You know those people in crisis that they hold the torches, right? And they're like, follow me, I got this, I can see the exit. And that's who she became in this moment. She did like $75,000 in 3 weeks. This is somebody who has like $150,000 year business just normally.
What kind of work is it?
She does consulting work. Yeah,
Mhm.
consulting work. So with small business owners. So it's yeah, and I've just seen so many people. I have here's a great story. One of my employees, amazing employee that I have, she's our marketing manager. Her mother owns a wedding dress design company. She makes wedding dresses. Guess what? Nobody's buying wedding dresses and nobody's designing wedding dresses until they know when their wedding can be. And she kind of watches some of our stuff because she has her own business. She turned this around to do two different things. One was to create custom masks for corporations, and the other was to take women through a co-design partnership in designing their wedding dresses over a 6-month period where you get on Zooms and you co-create with her. And she's going gangbusters. Why? Fire inside of her was bigger than the fire around her.
Yeah, that's a really great example. I've got two nieces, and both of them, one had to cancel her wedding in early April, and that was up in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area, and the other one had to cancel it out in Virginia. And they, both went online and said, "Oh, so sorry. We're going to just do a, small private ceremony, and then at some point, we'll all get together and get to party." So I could feel that heartbreak and that pain. They had such great plans going into it, but this lady, this client of yours, or the person who was right in the heart of that sort of thing, couldn't be providing the wedding dresses because people didn't know what was going to be happening next, but just did a very subtle pivot, wasn't it? I mean, went to do work with the masks, but then invited the brides in to let's co-create this dress together. Now you have a little bit more time. It's not quite so nutty as most weddings are. Really fascinating. Well, it's been great talking to you. You have a special offer for our guests, as I've been told. Would you like to go through that for us?
I do. Thank you so much. We're holding our 3-day event. I've been doing a 3-day business building event for the last decade now. I say that, and oh my gosh, that makes me feel lightheaded. The last decade. And we've had, our events range from everywhere from 400 people up to 1,000 people we've had live and in person in Las Vegas and Orlando. And here we are in the times that we are in. And so we are doing our first ever Driven the Event Home Edition. So we're doing a virtual version of our event this year, which means you don't have to get on a plane, you don't have to have a snoring roommate, you don't have to eat a bad Caesar salad at the Marriott. And so we're really excited about Driven the Event Home Edition this year. It's a 3-day business building event, teaches you everything from soup to nuts on how to grow a 6 or 7 figure business. And we are almost sold out. I will have to be dead honest with you. I have this wonderful interview and 3 other things, and we had to kind of carve out and hold on to tickets for these interviews that I already had on the books, which we're delighted about. But you can join us at a special pricing. Please don't go to the website. You can go to the website, which is Driven the Event, and look at things, but you'll pay more if you go there. We have a special pricing that we put together just for your listeners, and they can either come for general admission, or you can do VIP, which gets you some additional trainings and some additional sessions. And so if you would like to join us at the special pricing, it is drivenwithpark.com. drivenwithpark.com, and that's just Driven the Event is the event, but go to drivenwithpark.com and you can join us for 3 days for $97 or with a VIP upgrade for $147. And as I said, marketing online, marketing offline, sales, messaging, crafting your offers, pricing. We're going to be talking a lot about right now, right after, and forever strategies with where we are in the world right now. So we'd love to have you. Also going to be talking about story in there a little bit and how that relates to your business and your brand. We cover that as well. So drivenwithpark.com is how you can join us.
That is so cool. When does it kick off?
June 17th, 18th, and 19th.
June.
Yes, registration is the day before. We'll be open for registration from about 12 to 6.
And will it be recorded so people can watch it after the fact, or is it really about catching that live event online?
It will absolutely not be recorded and sent out because this is an experiential experience. We're doing a lot of partnerships. We're doing a lot of small group work. We're doing a lot of work in the moment and live coaching. So listen, if you have to step out for a little bit or you had to miss a little bit, of course that is okay. But you really want to carve out June 17th, 18th, and 19th and be there live.
And that's coming right around the corner. So our listeners need to get on that in that special rate at drivenwithpark.com. That's so great that you guys offered that. And I really enjoyed having you on the show. You've given me a whole new perspective of looking at that quitter story and how you can overcome it, not let that quitter story take you over. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. This has been a blast, and I hope to see people at the event. It would be fun to meet some of your tribe and your folks.
Awesome. Well, and I'd like to thank the tribe and my folks for listening to this special edition of the Business of Story. If you liked what you heard or you know someone that would be interested in Driven the event, then by all means, share this episode with them. I think they're going to absolutely adore what Suzanne had to say. And of course, share that link with them, drivenwithpark.com for special pricing. That event's coming up quickly, June 17th, 18th, and 19th, so you're going to want to get on that right away to reserve your seats. But feel free to share this show with them. And of course, if I can be of assistance to you, come on over to thebusinessofstory.com. I'm here to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. At the risk of overwhelming you with offers, I got my new book out, Brand Bewitchery. So get a copy of that because it is the hand guide that is going to take you through dialing in your brand story. And not only that, it is in every single chapter going to teach you how to tell that story in more compelling, confident, influential, and persuasive ways. Plus, in the book, there is a story activation plan. So once you've got your brand story dialed in, I take you by the hand and show you exactly how to launch it in the world. And our online course, Brand Bewitchery, I'm over at Thinkific, businessofstory.thinkific.com. You can also find it through our site. I am finding that our listeners are loving both. They go through the course, can do that, of course, online with some video tutorial, and then they use the book almost like a textbook. It's the great companion pieces, so check those out as well. And as you are bringing your story together, you may well experience the kind of growth that some of our other clients have, by as much as 600%. And the way you get there is not just through my work, but events like Driven the event and what Suzanne has shared today. So my encouragement to you is to take the advice that she's given. I've gotten a bunch from her now and overcome that quitter story, that procrastination, that story of, I'm going to do it tomorrow. One of the first things I'm going to do is just what Suzanne said. I'm going to go and write, what does my next week look like? And craft that fictional account that I can live into and have a much more powerful business. I just love that idea. And that second idea of, if I decide not to do that, if I procrastinate or quit on it, who do I impact? Not me, but who else is affected? I just love those two ideas. So thanks again for that. And thank you for being here. If there is anything I can do for you, just reach out. You can send me an email at park@businessofstory.com. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't give another tip of the hat to Sendable. They handle all of our storytelling online. Fabulous platform with Gavin and the team over at Sendable. Check them out. There's a special discount code for you there too. Sendable.com/park30 for 30% off their traction plan. So thanks for listening. Join us next week when we will have another story artist here like Suzanne. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one.